Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I'm Wes, and I'd like to thank you for being you and to thank you for listening. As you may imagine, I am recording this in my bedroom, and you might hear some snoring, and that is from my dog Maddie, and she is having a lovely nap right now. Okay, so firstly, some life updates. One, I moved from Escondido, California to Bella Vista, Arkansas um, last May, and now I'm over here and actually getting ready to move again within Arkansas, within Bella Vista, um, next next month actually, next May. So a lot of moving transitions have been happening for me recently. Two, I've been honored to work as an English and debate instructor with Providence Classical Christian Academy for the past year or so. And I've also gotten into a master's degree program through Villanova University, and I'm in their classical studies program specifically. This is my second semester as a student with them, and I'm working on my final essay with the third class that I've ever taken. And so I'll have seven more master's classes to go before I can get this degree. Um, and last but not least, I have a girlfriend, and she is epic and amazing and wonderful and fantastic and magnificent. And her name is Caitlin. And um, I hear she's planning to move over here before too long, and I am so excited. Um, so those are some life updates. Okay, number four. In the summer, I'm hoping to um, do to get in a rhythm where I'm doing one blog post and one short video each week. Hopefully, maybe I can make that happen a little bit more consistently, but at the bare minimum, I'd like to try to push myself, do at least one blog post and one YouTube video per week. And I'm also hoping to grow the Discord server that I started a couple years ago. It's called Abyssus Abyssum Invocat, which is the Latin translation of Psalm 42:7. You might find different numbering depending on what edition you're using, but Abyssus Abyssum Invocat means deep calls unto deep, or uh, literally speaking, Abyssus deep, Abyssum deep, and then Invocat calls. So deep to deep calls. And yeah, with that Discord server, I'm hoping that it will become a community, a nice third place, so to speak. Um, I'm hoping to get into a lot more conversations about biblical studies, historical theology, the intersection between religion and philosophy and politics, comparative religion, balancing orthodoxy, like theory and doctrine, with orthopraxy, um, practice, that is to say. And yeah, Lord willing, I can record some videos with church leaders and just start a lot more conversations about how to improve um, not only church unity, but unity all around as much as possible without sacrificing or making light of very important ideological differences. I at least want to do my small little part. Um, Okay, so I've given some life updates. Now let's launch into the Q&A. Okay, so in the Discord server, I'm going to address 2 questions. The first question that I will address is, what does thought pot brewing mean? And then the second question I will address is, what are my opinions on Skibidi toilet? So firstly, what does thought pot brewing mean? That's taken from my Discord tagline, thought pot brewing. And actually, if you look just above, you'll see a crock pot that isn't actually plugged in, but it's set too high. And instead of it reading crock pot, I have written the word thought over it. So thought pot, the original slow cooker set on high, is supposed to not just be it's not just a prop, literally propping up the screen. The thought pot is a metaphor for how my brain works. I'm undiagnosed with this, but I'm pretty sure I'm probably some measure of autistic and ADHD, and or ADD. People have their different sides that they take in these linguistic conversations. But anyway, I definitely share quite a few traits with those communities I've been learning over the years. And yeah, so yep, hopefully that answers that first question. That's what the thought pod brewing means. That's a metaphor for my brain, my consciousness, my psyche. Okay, now the second question is a little bit more involved, but I'm going to try to give an answer to this that's sort of sufficient within 10 minutes. So let's see if I can cap this video before it gets to 20 minutes long. Okay, so what are my opinions on Skibidi Toilet? My first reactions as of a week ago were, what is this? And goodness, it looks disturbing. And also, what is the appeal? What is the appeal to this? Okay, so in order to try to better understand what Skibidi Toilet is, I've had to do some YouTube watching and some reading, and I've come across an infographic YouTube channel, which I think did a pretty good job introducing me to this vast cosmos of Skibidi Toilet. And I've also come across these Forbes articles. Both are written by Danny D. Placido. One of these is called The Surreal Horror of Skibidi Toilet, in which this author basically says that he was a dad who was concerned at first, but then he started watching these things with his son, and then he started to see the appeal eventually. And he also wrote this other article called Skibidi Toilet Creator Talks Inspiration, Dreams, and Insane Ending. So I wanted to read a little clip from this and comment on it a little bit. So here's the little clip. Toilet nightmares continued to plague Gerasimov. Gerasimov being the guy who originated this set of videos. And he was advised to find a way to fight with the toilet heads, even virtually. So there's a lot to understand about the toilet heads that we're not going to have time for in this video. But if you're a parent and you're looking up Skibidi Toilet, or if you're like me and you have no kids and you're just wanting to understand, you're just wanting to understand what younger generations are getting into. Well, this video is probably directed for you as well. Anyway, Gerasimov reckons that many people relate to his videos because they were based on the reality of these nightmares. Now, long story short, before I was baptized, I can testify I had so many terrifying nightmares and probably one sleep paralysis episode. Not fun. I was just so glad when eventually I stopped having the nightmares, or at least any nightmares that I could remember in the morning. So, take it or leave it. It is interesting that I stopped having a lot of nightmares after being baptized. That still mystifies me to this day, but yeah, for the most part, they stopped. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. Gerasimov's animation emerged from the darkest corners of his subconscious, and he even experienced a dream that appeared to predict his future success. Gerasimov described his prophetic dream as taking place, quote, outside in the city, end quote, with, quote, a surreal atmosphere, end quote. He describes this city as being infested by toilets, with people, quote, riding in toilets on TV, and ordinary people with normal heads, but toilet bodies, end quote. Then came divine inspiration. In his dream, Gerasimov was approached by none other than Jesus Christ, who whispered in his ear, "The world is blessed with Skibidi toilet." Gerasimov admits that the dream didn't make sense, but he found it strangely reassuring. It was the first dream involving toilets where I wasn't terrified, Gerasimov said. It made me have a strange feeling of toilets being some kind of divine and unexplored entity. Thus, Skibidi toilet was born. Okay, so before going forward with my minimal actual responses from me, I wanted to start out with this sort of tangential thing right here. Once upon a time, close to 2 decades ago, I started reading Dr. Richard Beck's experimental theology website, and one of the first articles that I read was Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? On Disenchantment and the Demonic. Now, if you skip along quite a bit, he starts commenting, "As I sat watching Scooby-Doo with Aiden the other day, it struck me how Scooby-Doo is a perfect parable of disenchantment. In his book, A Secular Age, Charles Taylor talks about how, over the last 500 years, the world moved from enchantment to disenchantment. 500 years ago, the world was full of supernatural forces, witchcraft, and ghosts. A world full of thin places, where the border between this world and the other world was porous and leaky. 500 years ago, people could be demon-possessed or afflicted by witches. The night was full of occult menace and magic. Black cats were bad luck. Things are much different today. We live in the aftermath of the Enlightenment and the Age of Reason. We are moderns, where science, technology, and skepticism now rule. With electric lighting, the dark forces of the night have been abolished or banished. There's no room for monsters. Medicine and psychiatry have pushed witchcraft and demon possession off stage. Worrying about black cats is just superstitious and irrational, and ghost stories are just that. Fictional tales to scare the kids around the campfire. Watching Scooby-Doo, I realized how closely the show traces, in a single episode, this movement from enchantment to disenchantment. The episodes begin with enchantment, with a supernatural monster, specter, ghoul, or ghost. But as the kids investigate, they get suspicious. Reason asserts itself, and the monster, the agent of the occult, is eventually revealed to be Mr. Jenkins, the greedy banker. The story ends with disenchantment. The supernatural was simply a cover for workaday greed, theft, and corruption. But then I started thinking about how money and gain are repeatedly revealed to be true motives behind the villains in Scooby-Doo. Money is the power behind the occult force. And this made me wonder if Scooby-Doo is as disenchanted as I took it to be. Given the close association between the demonic and the economic in the Bible, it struck me that there really was a spiritual power at work in Scooby-Doo, perhaps the most demonic power of all. Then he goes on to quote the final temptation of Jesus and the Sermon on the Mount, and Paul writing to Timothy, the love of money is the root of all evil. So as I sat there watching Scooby-Doo, I began to wonder, perhaps this isn't a tale of disenchantment after all. Perhaps Scooby-Doo really is a story about the occult and the demonic. We've just lost the ability to see it. We moderns think the world has been rid of the dark forces, the ghouls, the ghosts, demons, and the monsters. But these occult forces of evil haven't been expelled, expunged, or exorcised. They still haunt and torment. As we see in Scooby-Doo, the demons still possess us. Now, so just as Richard Beck tries to see what might be a sort of spiritual message within Scooby-Doo, or he's trying to see how we might reconcile Scooby-Doo with Christianity and the Bible. So I'm kind of curious, how can Skibidi Toilet be sort of reconciled or brought to Christ to some degree? Of all places, I'm going to go to Rich Mullins. Rich Mullins once said, "I grew up hearing everyone tell me God loves you. I would say, big deal, God loves everybody. That don't make me special. That just proves that God ain't got no taste. And I don't think he does. Thank God, because he takes the junk of our lives and makes the most beautiful art." Okay, so Rich Mullins is one of my absolute favorite representatives of contemporary Christian music who died way too early. And I was drawn to this quote after thinking about Skibidi Toilet for a bit, because to summarize the little bit of Skibidi Toilet that I've looked into, you have this war between like humans that are toiletized, you might say. They're not or you might say anthropomorphized toilets. And then they have this war with all of these screens and all of these, you might think, distortions of reality, these illusions, these if you go into the desert and you see these mirages. Now, in some sense, I think Skibidi Toilet is very thought-provoking about what is reality? Are we supposed to just swallow whatever media, film, books, articles, the internet? Are we supposed to absorb foot, line, and sinker, or whatever the idiom is? Are we supposed to absorb all of that and just assume that whatever we come across is reality? Or could it be that there's a lot more to the conversation? Okay, I'm coming close on 20 minutes, so I want to try to wrap up quickly. At any rate, I sort of... okay, here's another Rich Mullins quote that I wanted to visit. "I'm a Christian not because someone explained the nuts and bolts of Christianity to me, but because there were people who were willing to be the nuts and bolts, who through their explanation of it held it together so that I could experience it and be compelled by it to obey. If I be lifted up, Jesus said, I will draw all men unto me. And then there's this third Rich Mullins quote: God is always going to be bigger than what we imagine him to be. God is always going to be bigger than what we understand him to be. So, in some ways, Skibidi Toilet gets me to think about very. It feels so weird saying this, but it really does get me to think about what is reality. Um, how can I um, how can I triangulate truth amidst all of these billions of sources and resources that I can find on the internet? How, how how can I discern truth? How can I discern what is good and beautiful, if anything? Um, and just as Skibidi Toilet is bigger, I didn't even know it existed a week ago, but evidently it does. And just as it is bigger than what I imagined it to be. So, I mean, all the more so, um, if you believe that, even just a little bit, if you believe that there is any truth to this whole God thing, then goodness gracious, how big, so to speak, how tremendous, um, how loving, how mysterious, how immanent and transcendent this God is. There are some related quotes way back when St. Anselm wrote the Proslogion, and he once said, "Therefore, O Lord, thou art not only that than which a greater cannot be conceived, but you are a being greater than can be conceived. For since it can be conceived that there is such a being, if you are not this very being, a greater than you can be conceived. But this is impossible, for God is greater than can be conceived." And the very next chapter is amazing. Anselm goes on to talk about God as the unapproachable light, as one who only can see because of because there must be a ground of meaning, and that ground of meaning and being must be God. He says, "Whatsoever I see through it, as the weak eye sees what it sees through the light of the sun, which in the sun itself it cannot look upon." And we just recently had an eclipse go throughout Arkansas and Pennsylvania and California too. So in a way, this is a very timely reflection, I think. O supreme and unapproachable light, O whole and blessed truth. He's speaking about God, remember. How far out are you from me, who am so near to thee? How far removed are you from my vision, though I am so near to yours? Everywhere you are wholly present, and I see you not. In you I move, and in you I have my being, and I cannot come to you. You are within me and about me, and I feel you not. Now, if you're feeling a little depressed, hearing that, dwell on that some more. I've got a couple more quotes, and then I'm really going to wrap up. St. Gregory of Nyssa once said, "When he considers the universe, can anyone be so simple-minded as not to believe that the divine is present in everything, pervading, embracing, and penetrating it? For all things depend upon him who is, and nothing can exist which does not have its being in him who is." Now, you might think like me, "Whoa, Greg, lay off with the simple-minded talk, would you?" But these people, Rich Mullins, Gregory of Nyssa, and Anselm of Canterbury, in their own way, were all, I think, evoking another concept that came about way, way, way earlier. In Acts 17:28, Paul was speaking to the philosophers at the Areopagus, and as part of his sermon, in which he quotes no scripture directly, he says, "For, as some of your own poets have said, in him we live and move and have our being." And that is probably from Epimenides of Crete, probably Epimenides Critica. And then he follows that up with, "For we are indeed his offspring." And that's probably from Aratus's poem Phenomena. But yeah, anyway, if you look in the Greek here, there's an interesting thing that happens. En auto ha zomen ke kino metha ke esmen os kai tin es ton kath imas pointon ili kasin tu hal kai hinos esmen. At any rate, if you study this Greek even just a little bit, what's really interesting is that in Epimenides' original thing, it goes, "In Zeus we live and move and have our being." But then in the Greek of the New Testament, what's essentially happening is Paul goes, no, not Zeus, but this God whom I'm proclaiming to you. In him we live and move and have our being. So according to Rich Mullins, according to Gregory of Nyssa, and according to Anselm, it's a bittersweet thing, but God is so mysterious. And that mystery is incredibly transcendent and tremendously imminent. Closer than we realize and farther reaching than we can realize. And I don't want to get into my whole constant spiritual struggles that I have, sort of like Ecclesiastes, but I can confirm this. Just as Skibidi toilet may seem very disturbing on a first impression, and just as there's so much more to it if you just look for a little bit. So I think it's also likewise true that the whole God thing is pretty similar. Perhaps disturbing at first, but a lot more to it than meets the eye. So, anyway, I'm getting close to a 30-minute video, and I meant for this to be 10 minutes shorter. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being you. Thank you for listening. This is just me musing as I do every day. And I'd be glad to connect with you. Thank you so much. And great questions, very thought-provoking. Let God win and let all economic systems be subservient. And let's not fall for the demons of capitalism or any other thingamajig that comes up. Let the God of love win, the God of wisdom. And if you're an atheist or an agnostic or an agnostic or whoever you might be, I'm so glad you've watched this far. I am a perpetually wrestling Christian and Questian, so I don't want you to feel left out either. Okay.